Hello, my name is Melissa Isaak. I'm an attorney here in Montgomery, and I'm an attorney on the case that we're going to file today with the Alabama Supreme Court, and it really hits hard on our election rights. Now, Alabamians should have confidence when heading to the polls, knowing without a doubt that their vote will be counted and their voices will be heard. This statement was made by John Merrill, yet when the people of Alabama came forward with irrefutable proof that our elections are not secure, we'd ended up here at the Alabama Supreme Court in litigation with John Merrill and the other elected officials who are duty-bound to make sure that our votes are counted. And they're counted in how we cast our votes. That's why we're here. Today we have lawyers on the case, we have plaintiffs, and we have witnesses. We're going to talk to you about how we ended up at the Alabama Supreme Court. So I want to introduce to you today Mr. Jay Hinton. He's co-counsel attorney on this case.
Thank you for being here and for paying attention to this important issue, probably the most central issue to Alabama citizens and to citizens at large around our country. Just a few steps from right where we're standing today, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the importance of the right to vote. It is the bedrock of a civil society, and that's one of the components to our lawsuit. And one of the things that we're challenging is we're coming up here to the Alabama Supreme Court. One of the things that is critical and crucial about our challenge is that we have proved beyond a shadow of a doubt in the court below and will to the Alabama Supreme Court that the voting system that is utilized here in Alabama, the electronic voting system, is not certified. What does that mean? The statutes in Alabama require that certification is a key component to utilizing electronic voting systems. The entire system has to be certified, and it has to be recertified every time that system changes. Although the Secretary would like for you people to believe that, in fact, this is a certified system, it's not. In fact, in December of last year, when the last meeting took place where certification could have happened, the Secretary claims that, in fact, that's when the system got certified. That's not true. 2 months later, or a month later, the system was altered with at least 67, we believe, laptops that were purchased to put into practice, to use to count your vote. And we're told that without certification, we're supposed to trust that system works. That is a high falsehood for the people of Alabama. Supposed to believe that Dell computers from China that we use without being certified are supposed to be accurate. In that December meeting, there was a quote and unquote certification. But do you know who the certification came from? The statutes require in Alabama that nobody can certify an electronic voting system unless they are completely distant from any financial interest in the system. Well, in Alabama, the Secretary and the voting systems here utilize the services of the vendor that's actually sending and selling the components to the state of Alabama. That's who does their so-called certification. That is an absolute illegality. Even if it wasn't illegal, it ought to offend everybody within the sound of my voice. That is entirely inappropriate for the fox to guard the hen house. It shouldn't happen, and yet it's happening right here in Alabama. We're going to present that to the Alabama Supreme Court in our appeal that will be filed shortly, and we want the people of Alabama to know that we are out there fighting for every vote, whether it be red, yellow, black and white, old and young, 18 for the first time voting or 88 for the last time voting, and everybody in between. Everybody's vote counts, and we want the electronic voting system to work properly, and if it's not going to work properly in accordance with the law, we need to do away with it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Rogers, and I'm one of the plaintiffs in the case with Focus on America. But before I make my statement, Representative Tommy Haynes is not able to be here today, so I'm going to read you his statement. It says, when we allow someone besides the people to tell us who our leaders are going to be, we have become a communist state. If something isn't done about the machines, we will eventually lose the republic. Right. And that's a statement from Representative Tommy Haynes, one of the plaintiffs in the case. But you know, we have rights. We have laws that protect those rights, which include free and fair elections.
Right.
In Alabama history, I was taught that Alabamians fought hard for voter rights and that it was an honor and a privilege to have those rights. Yet our elected officials refuse to protect those rights, and they repeatedly tell our citizens, they tell us, you have no standing. If our elected officials violate the laws as they did here, if they refuse to remedy them, and if they tell us we have zero right to remedy before the judicial branch, where do we turn to? Where do we turn to? Where are we supposed to go for remedy if it is not the judicial branch? Our official state motto is, we dare defend our rights. And our government and elected officials, if they're not going to defend those rights, then my hope and my prayer is that the Alabama Supreme Court, our Alabama Supreme Court, will have the courage to step forward and defend the rights and the voter rights of every Alabamian. It's my great pleasure that I introduce counsel on our case, Mr. Phillip Jauregui.
Thank you, everybody. I want to talk with you about our voting system and the fact that it's not secure. The Alabama voting system is wide open to hacking and to the internet, and that's despite the fact that both of the defendants in this case have said it's secure. Secretary of State John Merrill claims that the laptops, and by the way, these are the central hub of counting the votes in each county. All of the sticks come into the laptop, so the laptops are a key part of the voting system. They're not certified, but even if they were, they're wide open to the internet. So Secretary of State John Merrill said that these laptops are, quote, standalone computers with no network capabilities, end quote, and he said that they were, quote, hardened. The other top defendant, Judge Bill English, the chairman of the Electronic Voting Committee, promised Alabama voters that, quote, the new laptops do not have the capability of being connected to the internet, end quote. Both of those statements are false. And they're false based upon the documents within the defendant's own custody we discovered in this case. Let me tell you what their own purchase order says about the laptops. Their own purchase order shows that these laptops that are the key to counting votes in Alabama that were used 2 days ago, those laptops have two attack capabilities. They have Intel Wi-Fi 6 and they have Bluetooth 5.1. Now this isn't my opinion. These are within the documents of the defendants in this very case. Our voting systems are not secure. They're wide open. They're hackable. So, what are the voters of Alabama supposed to do? When their top two elected officials who are there to protect their vote tell them voting is secure and it's not. What do? When our two elected officials tell us, step aside, sit down, you don't have standing, we'll handle it, but they don't. And most importantly for our purposes today, what do? When our top two election officials arrogantly tell the honorable justices of this Alabama Supreme Court, you have no jurisdiction either. The plaintiffs don't have standing, you don't have jurisdiction, and we as the top elected officials are doing nothing about this insecure, janky election system that doesn't work. That's why we're here today, to do two things. One, to file our brief, to make our appeal to the justices of this court. And the second thing is to call on God to let his justice rain down from heaven like a river. Amen. And bless the honorable justices of this court, this state, and this nation. Thank you. And next, we have a witness who's going to talk with you about these janky ballot counters that took counterfeit fake ballots in an actual test. Angela Shepard.
Hi, my name is Angela Shepard. I'm here today for one reason, and that's to bring awareness to the public about a serious problem that our elected officials are trying to ignore. On May 16th, 2022, I attended the voting machine testing in Lee County. I had with me 8 photocopy ballots printed on plain sheet paper of my absentee ballot I had received in the mail. My intention was to test to see if these machines would take and accept fake ballots. Let me again state that these were 8 copies from one absentee ballot made on standard office copy paper. I also had to trim the edges with scissors to make the ballot the correct size. When I inserted the copied ballots into the tabulator, it accepted and counted all 8 of them. I immediately notified the probate judge who was in attendance. He was not responsive to my concerns and referred me to the ES&S representative. The ES&S representative proceeded to explain to me that this wouldn't happen during an election because the precinct ballot numbers wouldn't balance at the close of polls on election night. He was referring to ballot accounting that should be done at each voting place during elections. Ballot accounting is required and accounts for the voting place during elections. Ballot accounting is required and accounts for the use of every official ballot used during the election. This helps ensure that the numbers of the voters and the number of ballots tabulated match. I have been a poll watcher during the recent elections, and I can tell you with certainty that ballot accounting was not done correctly in Lee County and sometimes not at all during the primary election. Anyone who excuses the flaws in our voting system is completely missing the point. The machine accepted and counted the fake ballots. In addition, the tabulator cannot distinguish between an absentee ballot and a ballot issued at the polls, nor can it distinguish between a ballot that has already been scanned and counted. Remember, I used 8 copies of a single ballot. Any ballot can be scanned multiple times, fake or official. The moment the probate judge became aware of this, everything should have stopped until ES&S was made to fix the problem. This isn't unique to Lee County, it has also occurred in Baldwin County. Instead of fixing the problem, the machines were improperly certified and used not once, but now 3 times, even after elected officials, including the Secretary of State, were made aware. They pretend this isn't a problem. Let me also say I'm a wife and a mom of 4 kids, and I became aware after the 2020 election and decided to get involved. This is about the process of elections, not politics. Our officials need to address these problems and fix them and stop ignoring us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, our Constitution says with clarity that all political power is inherent in us, in the people. Though that seat that John Merrill is sitting in does not belong to John Merrill. That belongs to us, the people. That seat that Wes Allen may or may not take on, that's not his seat. That's our seat, the people. We're here today to ask Alabama's highest court to follow the law and protect our right not only to vote, but have our votes counted in the way that they're cast. Our officials have a duty to enforce the laws, to protect these rights. Now, if we have an attorney general, when faced with proof that the ballot machines, the systems don't work the way they're intended, they don't comply with the law, instead of backing the people, instead of acknowledging with irrefutable proof that these systems are not working, if he's going to defend the Secretary of State, where does that leave us, the people? We have a right to redress. We have a right for our constitutional rights to vote, to be heard, for a vote to be counted. We have a right to take that to our courts, and that's what we're doing today. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. This matters. Elections matter. These seats are ours, and it's time, according to the Constitution, if the power truly is inherent in us, then we need to go to our elected officials to remind them of that. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Point of information, you have brought up 2 issues with the vulnerabilities of these counting machines. One of those vulnerabilities is being connected to the outside, either through the internet or Bluetooth or something like that, and the inability to distinguish between valid and invalid ballots, as well as the same ballot multiple times. There's a department underneath the Homeland Security, which is called the Infrastructure and Cybersecurity Agency. They have identified those 2 along with 7 additional vulnerabilities that all the machines share, regardless ES&S, Dominion, party, doesn't matter. They all have the same software. They all have the same problems. To date, none of those problems has been resolved according to the official United States government website.
You're absolutely right. And along those lines, during the hearing in this case, we brought in some of the world's top experts, world's top cybersecurity experts. They testified irrefutably. There's no one who can refute what they're saying because they're right. And they're the top experts who said there's more than there was hundreds of vulnerabilities they were able to identify. Hundreds of vulnerabilities. There was software that our systems are running on that is outdated. There was so much testimony that, in my opinion, it overwhelmed the Attorney General's lawyers where they couldn't even do an effective cross-examination. But yet, they want to say that even though we can't disprove what you're saying, you don't have any standing to take this to the court. And even though you're elected officials who are duty-bound to make sure that you have secure elections, that we protect the integrity, even though we're not going to do that, we're not going to address the vulnerabilities you bring to us, you have no standing for redress. So what do we do as the people of Alabama? Are we supposed to just say, okay, well, we believe that our elections aren't secure, we have proof that they're not secure, but we're just not going to do anything about it? We're not doing that, and that's why we're here today. Thank you for that. Anyone else have any questions? Yes.
So Angela mentioned that she attended the May 16th testing of the voting machines.
Yes.
When you went to the testing of the voting machines a couple weeks ago, were there any changes or improvements in that process?
No, not really. It was done a little bit more, I would say, like methodical. So they obviously, once that happened in May, they decided they probably need to shape up on how they're doing the machine testing, realizing that people are going to start showing up. And there was also supposedly a paper that we had to sign that supposedly came from the Attorney General. I've not been able to get confirmation from the Attorney General's office at this time from him if that was something that strictly came from him. I know from 8 other counties that I've been able to get to speak with, they did not have to sign any sort of disclosure sheet like that from the Attorney General.
Did you sign that disclosure form?
No, I did not sign that disclosure form because it is a public testing, and I felt like that was not what I should do, and so I decided not to, and I was told that my name would be given to the Attorney General's office for not signing it.
Yes.
On May 24th, we saw, watching the election returns, we saw 30,000 votes leave Kay Ivey and go to Tim James. Then about 5 minutes later, those 30,000 votes went back to Kay Ivey. Now, to me, we know that those numbers are coming from our own system, right? So those numbers are coming from our system. How do 30,000 votes move from side to side? And wouldn't that be evidence that we have some type of manipulation going on?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, that is evidence. Then that's the problem that we have is when we as citizens demand answers, we ask these questions, we're not getting answers. We're told that, well, we can't give you that information because it deals with election security, or that we're not privy to that information. So that's the problem that we have with our current system, is that we have all these issues that we saw this happen, and yet we're not allowed to have any answers. That's why we're here, because if the Supreme Court does what we think that they should do, what we know that they should do, and take this case, allow this case to go forward, we can enter into discovery, we can send subpoenas, we can take depositions. That is litigation. That is truth-finding. That's what we need to do. That's a great question, and unfortunately, we can't answer your question because we're not allowed to have the answers.
Let me address that as well. One of the problems that electronic voting creates is something that's really new to us as a society. For decades and centuries, and even across the world today, people cast ballots and they're hand counted all over the world, and that's the way we did it up until about 20 years ago when everybody said, oh no, that's too antiquated, we got to change. So what you now wind up with is, instead of a system where everybody at the sound of my voice, everybody who's graduated from at least the 8th grade can be a poll watcher, can count, see a pencil mark, see if something's colored in, put it in the right stack. Everybody can do that. It is a basic and very primitive way of counting ballots, but it's reliable. And it also does not lend itself to widespread illegalities. Whereas with a computer, just the flip of a switch, just the move of a knob, just the alteration of a code can change things like you're seeing, 30,000 votes in that respect. And the average person can't look at that and say, what is the problem? Oh, I see that. We put those in the wrong stack. Let's recount those and move them is the way we would normally and ordinarily do it. Now you have to have a PhD in computer science in order to answer the question. Our own voting officers, those who are in charge, as we've been talking about, the secretary and those who are in charge of the electronic voting system, don't have enough knowledge to even be able to answer the most simplistic questions about whether the system is working properly. Whereas years ago, it was a simple equation. Now it is a complex piece of calculus that only the smartest of the smart in computer knowledge can handle. And who do they turn to? As I said earlier, they turn to the folks that are selling us this equipment and ask them, is it working properly? And what do you think they're going to say? No, the millions of dollars that we're making off of you Alabamians? Oh, sorry, we've messed up. We've left holes in it. We've left exposed areas where people can manipulate the votes. Of course not. They're not going to say that. And that's why the law prohibits somebody from certifying a system that they have a financial interest in. Isn't that sensible? That's the way it ought to work in every walk of life. That if you're financially interested in something, you're not also the arbiter of whether it's functioning properly. And that's the stupidest thing in the world for us to be doing that here. And it's not only a bad idea, it's an illegal idea to allow those folks to be doing the certifying.
Well, I just want to say one more thing too. There was another piece of evidence that we saw, because we know with the way the system works, again, it reports the numbers that come from our system to CNN and to everybody else. It goes out. So CNN at 11:17 Eastern Time reported in the May 24th primary, all of the candidates, me and everybody else, had more votes at 11:17 Eastern Time on May 24th than we ended up with on May 25th when all the votes were counted. So that's, to me, evidence that there's a problem.
We agree.
I'm going to say something too. And some people think, well, it's not practical. You can't hand count votes anymore. This is 2022. That is not true. We hand count votes in France. That's a first world nation. Israel, many other nations across the globe right now understand this problem, and they're solving it by having hand counting. But we don't even have to necessarily move to sole hand counting. If people want to have the machines, keep them. You shouldn't. But okay, fine. If that's your solution, keep the machine, but let's make sure we have a hand count at every precinct to verify what's in the machine. If there's not a problem with the machine, why would anyone object to that? Why would anyone object to verifying it with a hand count? And we can do that. Again, it's administratable. They do it in France. They do it in Israel. They do it across the globe right now to prevent elections like we're having.
Thank you. All right, thank you again for coming. If anyone else has any questions, I think you get our contact information. But this is a very serious issue. And we're here fighting. We are exercising our rights. We're fighting for us. We're fighting for you. We're fighting for future voters. Thank you again for coming.
And we're going to hand out evidence that's in the record that, again, shows that the machines are vulnerable from their own documents from the defendant. We'll hand that out to you so that you can see it. Just see us afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.